Welcome one and welcome all. It has been a minute. I am Omarcomin. This is the Jimmy Boy Hour. You are who you say you are. It's been a pretty good week, capped off with, I would say, a balancing of the scales south of the border with the election of a sane human being. I'm feeling pretty good. I apologize for being a little bit derelict in my battle report duties, but the last couple games I've played haven't been all that fun, to be honest, and I didn't really want to report on them, this being one of them. Mainly down to my own incompetence, not for lack of having fun opponents, but yeah, I owe it to you guys to show the good and the bad. So far, been blessed to have a fair amount of good. So I guess it's about time to show some bad. So here we go. Got a game with another Ninth Age Forum luminary in Squigkikka, aka Gutrippa, aka the Swede. I think he's Swedish. I don't fucking know. Yeah, he was playing on Sylvan Elves, his first game back to Ninth Age in quite some time. So he was keen to get this in. He came with a list that I will try to explain since he didn't send his list to me. He has from left to right this representing deployment, this image here. He's got I don't know what the fuck they're called, but those are some little spear and shield elves. Looks like 15. Yeah, it looks like 15. Then he's got some wild huntsmen, some blade dancers without a character in them, or that might be with the character in them in there. Then another set of about, how many are in there? 16, another 16 blade dancers, another 5 wild huntsmen, a bunch of dryads. There is a dryad druid in that unit. Behind that is another set of spear and shield elves with a can't remember what school that is. That's a school with scrying and all that shit. Then he's got 2 units of 10 dryads skirmishing. A shapeshifter dude solo by the Impassable Train there, and then he's got 3 Kestrel Knights. My list has not changed. You'll see here this is deployments, so this is a frontline clash, map 10 with the breakthrough. This is not deployment. This is midway through my first turn. Right, this is map 10. Breakthrough, and we had the battle line deployment. I believe he chose to be bot side, and I chose basically to drop all, which was ill-advised. Actually, I think I dropped 2 things, and when he deployed pretty heavily on that western flank, I dropped the rest. Kind of backing myself into a corner. I really didn't want to have to deal with his magical forest in the center of the battlefield, so I figured it was best if I could just march through the one in my face there and then not have to deal with forest buffs apart from those he could cast or plant for the rest of the game. Probably not super smart. I feel like if I had just played him straight up, I have enough tools in my army that I could have beat him in combat for the most part. I mean, those blade dancers are pretty terrifying, but you'll see as the game goes on, this kind of ring around the rosy, around that Impassable Train, led to some not so great decisions in the movement phase for me, and as a result it's just kind of a congested, silly game, but kind of neat from a narrative perspective. You'll see I have both of my units of rangers deploying in that ruins or behind it on their scout, The Kestrel Knights and the Shapeshifter were closer to those ruins, but they both had Vanguard and moved to safety. So I was hoping I could chip a couple wounds off them. Anyway, we'll get to that. Let's go to turn 1 Dwarves. So this here is the end of turn 1 for the Dwarves. You'll see I shoved up probably more aggressively than was prudent, but the idea here was to basically make charges onto the nearest unit of Rangers unattractive, having to contend with the ruins as well as the potential of a flank charge from that vanguarding unit of warriors. The only unit that could have charged him was the Kestrel Knights, so I think he thought better of it at this point. In shooting, I fired all my shots on them. Looks like I did 1 wound with the, I guess that's 22 shots from the Rangers. Some were pretty shit because they're long range and through. Actually, I don't think you count cover through the ruins. I think they operate a little bit differently from woods, but still only managed to do the 1 wound. Neither of my cannons had a target apart from the Heath Riders on the, or not the Heath Riders, the Wild Huntsmen on the hill, and it looks like they hit and killed 2, which is pretty nice little snipe right there. Magic, I cast the Rune of Revocation onto his Kestrels again to make charging as unattractive as possible. We didn't roll the DTs here, but I think pretty much my entire army, except for 3 units, took DTs from marching through that forest, or marching into that forest, and will continue to take DTs as they march out of it. Let's go to Sylvan Elves turn 1. So, as expected, he just kind of proceeds forward with the bulk of his army. There's no particular reason not to. There's nothing standing in his way, and the objective is breakthrough, so both of us are just going to pass each other like 2 ships in the night, I suppose. Down at the bottom of the map, he does threaten my Rangers with his 2 units of skirmishing Dryads and a trailing unit of Wild Huntsmen. He moves the Kestrels into the flank of my entire army. That does not cause much joy, although I do have cannon shots with them, so I'm feeling pretty good about that, to be honest, because those cannons will kill at least 1 Kestrel every shot, provided that they can hit on short range. Provided they can hit. He does very little else. It looks like he has some kind of shooting. I'm not sure from where, but he manages to do 2 wounds onto the bottom unit of Rangers. I'm not really sure what would have caused that, because he's Druidism. He only has Scrying and Stars Align on the other school. I don't think... Huh. Yeah, that's odd. I'm not sure what caused those wounds. And it doesn't look like he did much else. He cast that spell that gives the model's footprint a forest on his Shapeshifter, but he's just hiding behind some woods, and we'll proceed. So Dwarven holds turn 2. Here we did resolve those DTs. So you see I lost 5 Kingsguard in the easternmost Kingsguard unit. I lost 1 in the unit in front of my general's unit, and it looks like I lost about 4 or 5 spears from the general's spear and shield dwarf unit. Not great. Marching through those forests is not ideal. That's through 2 rounds of DTs, actually. We did the first turn and then the second, so yeah, quite a few dead dwarves to those thorns, I suppose. In movement here, probably made the most substantial gaffe of the game. So the unit of Kingsguard that are trailing probably was being a bit too clever here, so I left him a big juicy flank charge on the general's unit with the BSB, thinking he might take that. And so I left my Kingsguard unit a flank charge, supporting flank charge on them should they not break. What I should have done in hindsight is not have left that. my general's unit does have the Rune of Readiness in this list, so the intention was to take that charge, spin around, face him in the front, and then flank the Kestrels on the following turn. My opponent was on to me, I think, and I overthought it. If I just turned around and faced the anvil, he would have had to either charge the cannon, which is doable, or maybe just not doable, and then alternatively charge the flank of a Kingsguard unit, or possibly the flank of a warrior unit if he so chose. But none of those are extremely attractive to him. I don't think. He ends up basically sitting in the middle of my army and having to deal with a whole bunch of countercharges. So instead, he does what probably anyone else watching this would have done. He charges my anvil. Anyway, down at the bottom, my miners arrive from ambushing, show up behind the Wild Huntsman. I think they managed to kill maybe 2, and then some of the Rangers, I think, do an additional wound onto them, but he survives there with 1 wound. And I actually shot with the second unit of Rangers into the Dryads, thinking that 1 wound would not have been all that impactful for the rest of the game, but I underestimated the power of Druidism, and you'll see what comes to pass as a result. Magic, I did get a resilience in, but it just doesn't really factor, so we'll move on. Unfortunately, this looks like another one of those patented Omarcomin combined screenshots. So this looks like it resolves turn 2 Sylvan Elves and turn 3 Dwarven Holds. In his turn, Squigkikka charged with his Druids to my lowest unit of Rangers, or not Druids, Dryads, and also sent the other unit of Dryads into the upper unit of Rangers. So he charged with both and made it in, but I believe what happened was the lower unit was killed and run down, and then in a subsequent turn, and the upper unit broke from combat and fled in front of the easternmost unit of warriors on the previous slide, who charged them in my charge phase, forced them to flee off the table. Actually, no, I caught them with that unit of warriors, but they ran something ridiculous like 11 inches. Might even have been 12 inches. And so they end up in that bizarre position they're in, about 1 inch from the table's edge, next to the miners, and completely unable to do much of anything in support on their next turn. So really not great overrun there. Sadly, the unit of warriors in my turn that I charged with, you see them at the edge of the ruins there with the gleaming icon. They were part of that combat, in the second round of combat, with the Druids in the ruins, and failed to run down the flea. So they moved, I think, 5 or 6 inches, but didn't catch them. Here I'm trying to do something a bit clever, but my opponent wants nothing to do with it. So this is his shapeshifter next to the impassable terrain. I'm trying to offer him a double flee here. So basically, if he charges that unit of warriors that are in front of the rock, his only option, should they flee, is either to charge a unit of Kingsguard, the one directly in front of my general's unit, the warriors with spears, or to charge the other unit of warriors just in front of the ruins. If I flee with both, he'll fail charge, and I should be able to see him with both of my Kingsguard units. Or, in fact, actually, I think at this point, that was probably a previous turn. In this turn, what I'm actually hoping he'll do is charge those warriors, kill them, maybe run them down, who knows, and then I'd be able to charge him with both of my Kingsguard units on the subsequent turn. I don't think, and obviously he doesn't do that, but I'm not too worried about that flank and losing that unit of warriors are basically a sacrifice I'm willing to make. In his movement, it looks like he turns everything around. You'll see that unit of Wild Huntsmen that was at 1 model is now at 3 models. And I'm not sure... Yeah, anyway. Back up to reasonable strength. That's a lot of attacks on the charge. And he turned the rest of his army around to face me. So my miners are now in grave danger, as are my warriors. In the backfield, he killed my anvil in 1 turn with his kestrels, which was sort of a surprise, but even so, you deal what it is. I think 2 shooting turns in a row, I either missed or misfired with my cannons on those kestrels, so that does not spark joy. Really disappointing to not have blown those out of the sky, and it just becomes increasingly disappointing as the game goes on. So here's the end of Sylvan Elves turn 3. And in fact, this is another one of those beautiful combo screenshots. I guess I was drunk, I don't fucking know, but I didn't take enough screenshots here, obviously, to tell the story adequately. It looks like this is his turn and maybe my movement phase. I hope it's not much further than that. I'll be able to know once we advance a little bit further. Right, so yeah, that's right. Okay, so it's his turn and my movement phase. So in his turn, he charged the Blade Dancers and his Wild Huntsmen into my unit of miners. The way the charge aligned, and with his Blade Dancers and Wild Huntsmen, the Wild Huntsmen actually overlapped the flank of the warrior unit, and as a result, on their overrun, they were able to flank my warriors. Looks like they didn't break them on the charge, which is quite a nice surprise, and they were able to reform to face them in the front. So a small, very minor victory there. In his movement, he starts making his way around that impassable. You see in the backfield, the far west, he's moving that unit of, I think they're Glade Guard or something like that. I don't fucking know the names of these things, but they're heading to score over in that field. He charged my cannon with his kestrels and obviously made short work of that. In the backfield, he dropped his seed, which is a really weird allusion to something I think we all do once or twice a week at least, and moved his Blade Dancers in there. His Shapeshifter is there as well, and 3 models of Wild Huntsmen are up, sort of all facing that unit of Kingsguard. In response, I whip half of my army around to basically deal with that very terrifying threat. You know, in the south of the map, I still have a lot of shooting to deal with those Blade Dancers. I still have a lot of shooting to deal with those Wild Huntsmen, and I think 1 Kingsguard and 4 units of warriors should be sufficient to at least slow it down. So really, the backfield is my primary concern at this point. So I probably overcommit here. I don't think I needed to turn everything, but I didn't want you know, his Shapeshifter in my ass would have been real bad, as would have just about any of these other units. So that was how I responded. Probably could have taken a bit more territory in the south of the map, but did not. And I'm not entirely sure why. In any case, we'll move on. So end of Sylvan Elves turn 4, I believe. He charges with his Blade Dancers and his Wild Huntsmen into my Kingsguard unit at the top of the map. Down below, he charges the unit of warriors that were sort of in the center there with his Blade Dancers. And it appears I fled. Did I double flee? I may have done a double flee here. I fled with 1 anyway that popped out the other side of the Kingsguard. it's not, something here isn't quite making sense, but those Blade Dancers end up basically in the face of that Kingsguard unit, which I feel pretty good about. They have flank support. We've got shooting in the flank as well, so that's pretty good position for me now. His BSB is there. At the top of the map, he charged that Kingsguard unit, but the Kingsguard unit did have Gleaming, so I had Gleaming. I think that unit was still at its full strength, so 15 Kingsguard with Gleaming, and he had his Blade Dancers and the Wild Huntsman. Managed to win that combat, surprisingly. I think he had sort of an unlucky roll with his Wild Huntsman. I believe he had 4 models, maybe 3, and fluffed most of his attacks. The Gleaming, of course, helps to be hit on 4s when you are, or maybe hit on 3s in this case. But even so, he didn't get quite enough attacks through him with Res 4 and Plate. I think he only did 4 wounds in combat, so that's pretty nice. In return, I think I I demolished the Wild Huntsman. They have shitty defensive skills, so if you give them a good whack, you'll get a substantial number of hits through. So that was the play there. And now I'm set up for nice counter charges on that unit in my turn. I think what happened with the Blade Dancers in the south is they caught the unit of warriors. Like I wanted them to catch the unit of warriors and either overrun into my Kingsguard, or I think they had pretty decent. It was like a 6 or a 7-inch overrun. So that I think was the intention there. Yeah, that's what happened. And then the druid, or the spear and shield dwarves, charged the other unit of warriors, which fled through everything. So sort of bringing them further into the mix there. Obviously, that unit of Wild Huntsman eventually ground down those other warriors, so that was a bit sad. But yeah, that's where we're at. I think this is Dorv's turn 5, so I ultimately charged his Blade Dancers with my unit of Kingsguard, the accompanying unit of warriors, and moved, I guess, reformed the unit of Kingsguard that hasn't really done anything all game. It's just been sitting beside that impassable. I charged the Blade Dancers with that unit of about 10 Kingsguard that were waiting. And it looks like they ultimately won that combat. They overran into the unit of Dryads, and the other unit reformed to sort of face the Shapeshifter and potentially offer a charge onto the Dryads in a subsequent turn. The rest of my army starts heading for the goal line. This is Breakthrough, of course, so if I can keep those unit of Rangers, and I don't even need to get another unit in there, I'll be winning objective at this point, provided those Dryads, which I think score. I might be wrong on that. They don't head to score. So in combat, I managed to get Gleaming off on the warriors, who needed a little bit more. Otherwise, they're just sort of going to take a whole bunch of wounds and tip combat in his favor. But charging here, I have 15 attacks at strength 7, 15 attacks at strength 4. I have Hatred on this unit, which has his BSB. They are Blade Dancers. I cast the Rune of Revocation on them, so they have no buffs. And shockingly, with their defensive dance, I managed to do maybe 8 wounds, 6 wounds, which seems like a lot, but they managed to stick, which was really, really surprising. I think they were rolling some stupid low leadership roll, like you needed a 4 to stay, and they ended up sticking on it, which is really fucking frustrating because they then benefit from several subsequent rounds of magic, and managed to remain for pretty much the rest of the game, as I recall. But pretty surprising, like oh shit, there's a pizza here. Hell yeah, dude, we got some pizza, feeling good. I think the only thing left to say there was that I shot off a couple of those Wild Huntsmen, so that is taken care of down at the bottom of the map. So the bottom of the map is pretty much mine now. In his turn, the Shapeshifter charged the Kingsguard The Dryads ultimately defeated my unit of Kingsguard, who fled. It looks like my Kingsguard got pretty much obliterated by the Blade Dancers at the bottom of the map, and fled into the center of the map. Again, that unit of Kingsguard that had very little to do all game turned around to face the Dryads, and everybody just starts moving towards the goal line. This game is effectively over at this point. I think he's just trying to collect whatever points he can. I think I charged another unit of warriors into... Just everything got all bunged up at this point. With that unit of Blade Dancers not breaking, being steadfast with that spell that makes their footprint a forest, or stubborn, they're just like impossible to shift. You have to kill them outright, and it's really hard to do with weapon skill 4, strength 3 warriors. So the game kind of ends like this. I think he takes another... He gets a couple more points off me. Yeah, he charges in with his spear dwarves. Ultimately gets those warriors. He gets the Kingsguard that were in the center of the map that fled from that Blade Dancer fight. But that's pretty much it. I mean, he basically just picked off my units throughout the game. And we ended up pretty much like that. So I won objective. He had... I think it was pretty close in points. I think he had a difference of about 500 or 600 points over me, so I managed to win 11-9. But it didn't really feel like a win. It was kind of a stupid way for me to have played. I mean, with a battle line, you don't really want to be spread out over the entire map, but I certainly could have done a lot more on the western side of the map. If I chose to just face him, I feel like I could have shifted a lot more combats. That said, I probably would have been facing both units of Blade Dancers at once, probably both units of Wild Huntsmen at once, the unit of Dryads at once. So I don't know. It's hard to say if that would have been better. I think maybe splitting my army a little bit might have been a better move. Maybe leave... Yeah, it's hard to say. Overall, it was kind of a weird game. Having shitty movement, I was basically at his mercy. Like, once I got log jammed between that impassable, the ruins, and my rangers, it was pretty hard for me to break out and do much of anything. I maybe could have turned the flank sooner, or opted to divert some things to the western side of that impassable terrain. But hey, I don't know. Generally speaking, for how kind of poorly I feel I played in this one, I'm happy with an 11-9. But Squig's a pretty good player, so I think once he's back up to speed, he'll get this one back no problem. So thanks again for watching, guys. I think that's it for now. Sorry again for the delay in getting to these. Hopefully, I got a couple games planned for the next couple days, so hopefully we can run a few more out at a good clip. Thanks again. Stay Jimmy, boys.